I think the Russian, and you know what, I'll tell you why I like this question, and look, I'm not an expert on Iran. The reason I like this is, I'm going to answer your question with a question, and I am going to respond. They share a border. If Iran has develops a militarized nuclear capability, you know, they're going to be in the line of fire before we are, at least geographically. They have a long history with the Persian people. It's not always been a happy history. So I have to ask you, why do you think they would tolerate that if they really felt a threat was imminent? I think the Russian view is this: A, they're making a lot of money. That is important. Second, they feel they have safeguards with what they're sharing that will protect the Iranians, or protect them, I should say, from the Iranians militarizing this. Now, I have to be honest with you. I have no access to classified material. I simply cannot judge how far along the Iranians are, how much their effort either is serious or whether it is close. I understand that there are people that are making judgments that have access to grind. And pardon me, I hope I don't offend anyone. This is now a personal opinion. It has nothing to do with Russia. I don't trust anything that Benjamin Netanyahu says. This to me is one of the most destructive figures in the Middle East. And when I saw this Gatekeepers, may I recommend a movie that's out now, The Gatekeepers? The Gatekeepers, that basically interviews the 6 leaders of this secret force that basically oversees the Palestinian area, the Palestine area. All 6 of them. When I heard some of the things they said and realized that Netanyahu had been coming out making comments just before Rabin was assassinated that may have incited that, this man has been poisoned. So I don't believe anything he says. So I just have to tell you, my wife is Jewish. It has nothing to do with me being anti-Semitic. I have a love for the Jewish people, etc. But there is a difference between loving the Jewish people and supporting someone like that. So I just have to say right away, as he has been flaming the fires, I don't believe anything he says. And I can say that because I'm not running for office, because I know the games we have to play with Israel. So I don't have to play that game. So I have to tell you, I will then say, and again, this is my judgment, I do not know. Oh, that's right, this is being recorded, this will be interesting. Oh well, see, I get carried away. Although I'll stand by that, and I did say, this is my opinion, I don't know. So I will tell you, in this logic, I believe nothing from them. And incidentally, there have been other Israelis who have come out and who themselves have argued that his claims are exaggerated. So that, I have to say, is a concern. I am still struck by the way we completely miscalculated on Saddam Hussein, but we sexed it up. But of course, you always have this value system that you never want to underestimate your enemy's strength, so you maybe often exaggerate it. So I have to be honest with you, I am skeptical. So if underlying your question is the assumption that they're rushing towards militarization, I will say in response, I do not know. But I don't just assume this as a fact, and I don't believe anything that many of those that are fanning the flames are saying about it. But in the end, for all of us, you and me, without access to this information, we don't know. And so you use your judgment. You use your judgment as to how you assess the Iranian regime. But I will come back to my question, which is, since they're close, since they have a hard history, I'm looking the long term, why would they want a nuclearized Iran? And incidentally, they are struggling, they have an ongoing problem with terrorism, Muslim extremist terrorism, and so the thought that they would help a country that's going to help those forces makes no sense to me. So I will just share that, but I'm in ignorance of the classified material. But I don't just automatically assume that when a prominent Israeli politician says something, it's true, and when the Russians say something, it's false. In the end, when we go back to Iraq, may I say, the Russians would say, they were right. They were right. And Bush and Blair, well, you know what the French call them, the axis of liars. There was the axis of evil, and there was the axis of liars. I've forgotten the name of the Prime Minister of Spain. He was the third of the liars. That's their view. I would say history tends to incline toward that view. I hope I'm responsive, but I think in the end, your call is as good as mine in a sense. We have to take information. I don't think the Russians are overly concerned. On the other hand, the Russians are not in a static position on this. And they have been a little bit more concerned about certain developments and comments in the last year. And so you've noticed they have permitted UN sanctions to get ratcheted up. So that does speak to some wariness on the part of the Russians. I would want to make note of that. They have not had a consistent position opposing sanctions. In fact, they have permitted these. They're not on the cutting edge of them, they've permitted them. As incidentally have the Chinese, which is another interesting story, but we won't go there. Okay, so that's who inspires the Russians. Now I'm back to the question about a little bit, I wanted to get to this picture here. This was another one of these moments. I think this picture speaks for itself. This was a very interesting incident. This was the case when Putin was taking a stroll. This was his first presidency. Out on the Red Square, he came upon this little boy. And you see he's reaching down. This is just where he lifted his shirt and he gave him a kiss on the tummy. Now this just exploded in the West as some kind of strange behavior. Why is he pulling the kid's shirt up and kissing him and stuff? So it happened, within that week, Matt Lauer took the Today Show to Russia for a day, and he got an interview with Putin. I have this, I show this in my class, it's just dazzling. So he sits down with Putin, I don't know how much time, let's say a half hour, they showed 3 minutes. You've got the president of Russia. There's all kinds of issues, like the one that you just asked about Iran, that we could be talking about. This is where he goes. President Putin, this happened. It was, many in the West thought it was odd. I'm sitting there, oh God, this is so embarrassing. I can't believe this. could you explain it? So Putin's sort of sitting there. You can tell he's a little bit, well, he's nonchalant, a little surprised. And then he just said, look, we love children, and I love children. And I saw this little boy. Now the translation was weird. What he said was, he's a cute little boy. They said he's pretty. This is the way they translate. He was a pretty little boy, but he meant cute, cute little kid. He was a cute little boy. And I just wanted to come over and give him a little kiss. That was it. That was it. And you see the scene, he bends down, talks to him, lifts his shirt, kisses him, stands up, pats him on the back, goes on. Now, of course, the little kid didn't take a shower for 2 weeks because the president kissed him. But the implication, again, you get the implication. What is this, a child molester, pedophile? Once again, Putin in some kind of a deviant way. And I just sat there. This went on. It was about 3 minutes they broadcast, so that was 2 of the 3 minutes. What could we have been talking about? What could we have been talking about? And this is what we're talking about. Something like this. Russians are very openly affectionate with children. Until they get to about that age. And then they get real tough. Tough disciplinarians. When I lived there, I had friends that had kids that would be maybe one child below the cutoff age, one above. And the ones older were always being disciplined. The Russians would be tough on them. And then the little ones are just babying to death. It was really interesting. These poor families, it was tough because the kids weren't treated the same. Russians are very openly affectionate about little children. So this was very Russian, in my experience. That's who inspires Russians, though. Not everybody. Not everybody. Okay, he won easily. He won easily. Again, I talked about these people. Here's the head of the Communist Party. Did we, when we talked about this, I'll come back. I know you've seen some things. We can talk about the problems of the election. Nobody wants the communists. Here's the billionaire got 8%. Here's the fascist who would like to take back Alaska, among other things. And then we had somebody who's another party in the center. Okay, so, and incidentally, with the surveys are very good. Here, I guess I took the slide out. Let me go back. The surveys were very good. His outcome, his vote was about within 1% of the predictions. I mean, there's no surprise. Now, this is where we had problems. This is where you saw stuff, the parliamentary election. And I got to tell you something. This statistic, if you can't see it, I'll read it to you. United Russia, this is the Putin platform party. They claimed in the end they got 49.6% of the vote. This, to me, is the single most interesting statistic or piece of information to tell you how much Russia's changed. Because this party, which had all kinds of advantages, they basically did a lot of shenanigans. There's no doubt about it. With all of that, they couldn't claim a majority. That's how tough the situation was. They knew they were up against it. This is probably why Putin ran for re-election in the end. I never assumed from day one he was going to come back immediately. But it was very clear that Medvedev's popularity was waning. People didn't see him as up to the job the way Putin is. And so he came back as a stronger leader. But they pulled out all the stops and they couldn't claim a majority of the vote. Now, because of the nature of proportional representation, they got the most seats. But look, they lost 77 seats. Communists picked up 35. This moderate party picked up 26. Even the fascists, they picked up 16. So the point is, look, Yeah, here we go. When you look at the surveys, intention to vote, this is, you know, I don't have any doubt there was relative consistency. Here's United Russia, then we got the Communist Party, all these down here. It's fairly consistent, but I don't have any doubt that there were irregularities and shenanigans, and you had this. You had hundreds of thousands of people out. You remember, you watched all this. It's all true. You know, so there's no doubt. Now, of course, let's be honest about it. There's 18 million people in the Moscow area, so you get a couple 100,000. This isn't the majority. But there's no doubt this was unprecedented. And there's no doubt in those parliamentary elections there were shenanigans. We'll never know how much of the vote United Russia won. Of course they didn't get 49.6% of the vote. But I don't believe they lost to the communists. So part of the reason I don't get carried away with this, I'm not going to deny, I think there was ballot box stuffing here and there. I don't think so for Putin when he ran 4 months later. There was no need. There was no need. You've seen the choices. You've seen the choices. Here, there probably were. On the other hand, what does that mean? We got to get out of the black-white. We don't take it from 49.6 down to 10. Well, maybe they got 45%. Maybe they got 40. It can't be below 40. And then you throw the votes around. So let's just go back for a second. You see, so maybe they got, I'm sorry, this may be, actually I didn't show you the percentage, I showed you the seats. So they got 49.6, they got something in the high teens range. Maybe the communists got 28% instead of 19. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, in the end, I think the outcome, this was the outcome. The percentages, though, would have been lower for United Russia. So there's no doubt about this, but the argument that somebody else won, I think, is not the case. And I don't really know why we would have wanted the communists to win. I wouldn't. And I don't think most Russians would have voted for the Communist Party. So this is part of the issue. The criticism of this, to me, from the outside, often feels like a blind rage at the regime. When you actually think about what's going on, and yes, we know there were shenanigans. On the other hand, I don't think anybody really believes the communists won, and I don't think anybody really wanted the Communist Party to win. Because that's what we're talking about. So here's a nice example. You've seen Garry Kasparov, the chess champion, on TV. His English is Native American almost. I mean, native, not Indian, but I mean just, it sounds like an American citizen. It's so beautiful. He hates Putin with a passion. I would call him a bit of an ambulance chaser in the sense that wherever there's a demonstration, he's there. Wherever there's a chance of getting arrested and the Western media are there to capture it, he'll be there. And he's a world-famous person. He won the chess championship, so he's never going to end up in some bad place, etc. Not by the government. Now, let's contrast him with Marat Safin, who is, at one time was the #1 world tennis player. He won the Australian Open. You may not be quite as familiar with him. I'm not a particular tennis person, so I don't have that much sense, but if you follow that, you would know him. He is a big deal. Well, let me tell you something. He's a member of the parliament, and he's a member of the Putin United Russia Party. So I bring him up because I want you to know not all the personalities are on one side or the other. There are many prominent personalities that are very supportive of the regime. Here is one of them. He's a nice, younger, good-looking guy, just like Kasparov. So it's all over the place. And you have to be a little careful sometimes because the people we see on television speak English, they're tied in with the West, so they have an agenda, they have a view. And incidentally, they represent a significant part of the population, but maybe 25%, not 75%. We're consistently disappointed with election results. Our people never win. It's not because of stealing, it's because they're not the majority. They're not the majority. And we get that sense because these are the people we would run into because of where we go, the people that speak English, the people that tend to know Westerners who are doing a sabbatical at the University of Minnesota, you know, this kind of thing. But the truth of the matter is they are not the mainstream. Any more than people that live in Greenwich Village and Berkeley are the mainstream of the United States. We have to deal with Kansas and Texas and Arizona too. Now I want to talk about this for a minute. Oh, this is great. This is being filmed and put on YouTube. But I'll talk about it. I'm being fair. This is our ambassador, Michael McFaul. There he is. This is he's being he would say accosted by the media, Russian media. He's saying, I'll read below. It says here. He says, it is not normal. It does not happen in our country. It doesn't happen in England and Germany. It doesn't happen in China. Only here, only with you. He's mad at the media that they're kind of harassing him. Now, what was this about? Why is he ticking off Russians? Because when he gets there, he's tweeting and doing social media with dissidents, and he's basically, in the Russian view, behaving in ways that are not appropriate to the representative of one country to another. It is not the role of an ambassador, they would say, to be fraternizing with the elements that are trying to overthrow a regime or are basically, you know, very, very hostile to what is happening in the country. Now, this is a judgment call. I'll leave it to you. If this is what you want your ambassador doing because you don't like Russian policies and it's fine with you that he's out there with these people, that's your judgment. Russians don't like this. This would be a mainstream view. Now, there's a little bit of a chicken and egg. How much of this is that the media highlight this and then maybe get people worked up, or that the people would be worked up? From my standpoint, as I know Russians, and my friends were mainstream people. I knew where the people were that hated like the Soviet regime. I had the opportunity to work in an underground school teaching English. I chose not to. I mean, I was there doing research. I wanted to meet mainstream people. And so that's who I know. My friends are mainstream people in their political views. They tend to be more, you know, Moscow academics. And so this kind of behavior is really, they don't like it. So here's the reason I'm bringing this up to you. You'll hear about this. Maybe you have. This gets, you know, he's out there. They're picking on you. This is Putin's picking on your country. They're showing disrespect to your country. Here's the context. Just remember the context. Most ambassadors don't do this. This is his stuff. Look, he lived there. He was on a program like I was on. His Russian is excellent, you know, so he can do this. Okay, I just wanted to mention this. All right, contemporary context. I want to get rolling here, but I'll take questions. The thrust of this, I think you have this on your handout, the thrust of this is to point out that with the, you've got the democratization of polity, the dictatorship of the law that's going after corruption. Bottom line is that the government, Medvedev, Putin, whenever they've been president, whoever, they've basically been somewhere between 60 to 80% approval ratings. And right now, I think Putin's in the mid 60% range. So I just want to note that in this context, there's pretty solid support. Okay, let's go to the tandem here. Although it's clear Putin is, you know, the main dog. How do you view him? I just wanted to point out these pictures. If you want to understand why did he have some solidarity with the Russian people, let's start with this picture down here. Here he is with his wife Ludmila. They are down. This was within a couple of days of him becoming president. This is when he addressed the country after he surprisingly became president when Yeltsin resigned. He does have a little bit of a deer in the headlights look about him, a little bit startled. I think he probably was. In any case, this is a few weeks later. He's down with the boys in Chechnya with his wife. Now, see, the Russians like this. You never saw Yeltsin down there, you know, with the men serving in that God-forsaken situation. He's down there. They like that. They like that. Here he is chairing a government meeting. I like this one. He was the head of United Russia at the time. Here, Medvedev was president. So, yeah, a little bit of sense. In the end, with Putin, he's a paramount leader. This is the point. It's like when Deng Xiaoping was leader. You know, you don't even have to hold office. The fact he was prime minister didn't mean that he wasn't the key figure, even though somebody else held the top position. He's a paramount leader. But I would bring this up too. I shared these statistics. What about Putin fatigue? Yes, that's why the results I mentioned from a survey a couple weeks ago. 22% they would like him reelected, 55% no. I don't doubt that. That doesn't mean they're against the regime. It's like, all right, 5 more years, it's enough already. You know, there's got to be something else. So I don't doubt that. Now, this is a really important picture. Here's another incident I want to tell you about. I was in Norway when this happened. I heard about this. I thought, oh my God. Putin comes up into the arena at the end of this martial arts exhibition between Russian and foreign martial arts, I don't know, boxers, whatever you call them. It happened that a very popular, Yamilyanenko, I think is his name, very popular but older Russian martial arts boxer won this match, actually against an American, and he came up to congratulate him. As he started to speak, there was booing. And incidentally, I can send you the YouTube link. You can listen to this, draw your own conclusion. So there's booing there. So I heard in Oslo, they booed, Putin was publicly booed, you know, at this, because, you know, Putin does martial arts himself. So this is his thing, he's there. So you can listen to it. Now, when you go to the YouTube and you read what the person who posted it says, shows Russian people hate Putin. Well, my reaction, so I got back to the US, I watched this thing. Now, I don't know how many people are, 5,000, 8,000, you hear this. Now, what I hear booing. And they do a lot of the whistling. The whistling is booing. I don't hear 5 or 10,000. 50, 100, 500, I don't know. I had a different reaction. I was sitting there, first of all, thinking, I've watched the Super Bowl when either President Obama or President Bush was there. I always heard a lot of booing. I never assumed the entire stadium opposed the president. But, you know, we're divided. But the other thing that really struck me about this was, this is not the Soviet Union. No one ever booed a Soviet leader. Nobody would have felt comfortable. I saw this as a sign of progress of the country. But I didn't hear 5,000 people boo. You go, you just search this, Google this baby. Put in Putin booing boxing. You'll come to it. You watch it. You draw your own conclusion. How much you hear. I don't hear 5,000 people, but I hear some people. I thought it was a very good thing. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, you offered a number of measures of progress and modernization in Russia under the reign of Putin.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if you would reflect a little bit on how those measures, you know, you're contrasting how we feel, how they feel.
Yeah.
I wonder if you would just reflect on our stagnation during the period that you're demonstrating that their middle class is grown by at least 100% according to your statistics, automobile ownership, IKEA stores, etc.
Do I have to talk about the United States? Look, I mean, this is all just judgment now. I'm an American like you, so I'm not going to avoid your question, but you know, I have no special knowledge. I just live here like you do. They were much less developed. They had a long way to go, so of course they could develop at a much more rapid pace than we would. And in this time, obviously, we've made tremendous advances. I mean, I have to stop and think about the fact that when I started my career, there was no email. You know, when I came the last time, it was logistically harder to do the PowerPoint. I'm not blaming you. Me too. And I just like, so we've had a lot of change. I frankly am not competent to judge relative change, our country versus theirs, since we're talking the starting point here with Putin would be 2000. In other words, when Bush came in, Bush, Obama. Obviously, we know the financial meltdown hit all of us hard, okay? There's no doubt about it. We can make judgments how we like the policies of these administrations. But on the other hand, from their standpoint, their country had collapsed. It had imploded. They were in a terrible 20-year-plus depression. They've come out of that. So when I look at the starting point for Putin, obviously it's a different context. So obviously we have not had as impressive a development over this time, 13 years. On the other hand, our starting point was so much more advanced, and then we did have that terrible meltdown. On the other hand, I'm getting political, but what the heck, you're a bunch of politically active folk on my side of the aisle, so to speak. We know that the wars we got into will cost us in a way that nobody is still talking about. I will watch Brian Williams tell me that so far it's cost us, I know, $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion. Give me a break. Give me a break. Those two economists, Nobel Prize-winning economists, published a book back in the summer of 2008. This is before Obama came in and said, at that point, if we got out of Iraq and Afghanistan, the cost would be about $5 trillion. And now it's been 5 years. You're talking 7, 8 trillion, probably. I know walking wounded, you probably do too. I'm happy on the one hand we've suffered nowhere near the casualties we did in Vietnam. That's my generation. But how many came back that can no longer work, that are emotionally, if not physically, harmed? What is that cost? I'm sorry to put it in this crude way, but I know one person that came back who would have probably been a fantastic triage nurse, would have made probably $100,000 a year or more. He's either dead or he's a street person now. He had post-traumatic stress syndrome. His marriage collapsed and he's gone. So instead of him contributing $100,000, he's either dead or he's costing a lot in languishing. So the point is that that's taken a terrible toll on us. And so, frankly, we do have to weigh into the equation. They were not been involved in foreign wars. Chechnya has been very interesting. It's very controversial. It's true. They pursued almost, by our thinking, genocidal policies. But in the end, it's quiescent. It's coming back. They're not bleeding that kind of money there. But they still have the cost out of Afghanistan. They have those issues, as we do with our veterans. I don't know whether I'm responsive. This is such a big question you're asking.
I guess, my point was really to ask you to reflect on how we champion, we're the vanguard of democracy in the world. Mm-hmm. And we have a shrinking middle class. Mm-hmm. We have a debasement of the currency. I mean, we go on and on and on. And you've put up a number of statistics mm-hmm. that show a remarkable run of 12 or 13 years.
Right.
Of economic growth and opportunity for people. And I just think that's an interesting comparison. I'm
going to move to some slides. I'm going to pray I don't have to kill too many slides. Oh, yeah, I really want to, I'm going to come back to this. This is very important. No, I have some material that's relevant to this. Let me just say, okay, so you saw this. I didn't bring these pictures. This was the fatigue. This was Putin with Miracle just a couple minutes before this. This is the picture I mentioned. This is the bare-breasted woman, and you can see Putin's a little startled. Yeah. And then you get Miracle, and then as I say, what she's got written on the back, we're not going to translate it, but eat me in a very powerful way, Putin. Okay, so this doesn't go far with the Russians. Okay, I don't know whether he said he liked it. I mean, I don't know. Okay, so he's back as, let me move through this, you get it. He's back as president, Medvedev is prime minister, similar team. Okay, we could talk more about where this is going. Let me tell you about Medvedev. I am going to come back to this. Who's Medvedev? I wanted to show you about Medvedev. You know what? I really like Medvedev. My Russian friends don't like him as much as I do. They say, Pat, you're a Westerner. Of course you like him. He's a nice-looking guy, smart as hell. He is smart as hell. I had fun in my classes in 2008. When we were down, it was in the spring, we had Clinton and Obama battling. McCain had won his. So I went into my class, and I tend to be a little cutesy, so here this is being filmed, but
hopefully somebody doesn't, they will get context what I'm going to say.
So I'm in class and said, let me have a little fun with you. He's the guy that's probably going to be the next president. So I'm going to be the campaign manager for Medvedev. I'm going to lay out his resume. It's more impressive than any of the three we've got now still in the running. And I just went through what the guy had done. He had been the chief of, he has a PhD in law. He's a lawyer, he's a law professor. He worked in reformism in St. Petersburg. He comes to Moscow with Putin. He ends up becoming the chief of staff, like the chief of staff of the White House, okay? He ends up being the chair of Gazprom, which is the largest gas company in the world. He's the political head of it, okay? He is the vice minister in charge of what are called the national priority projects. This is where I want to respond to you. They decided in the first Putin term, we need to target major areas where we need to infuse monies for infrastructure and turning the country around. Education, healthcare, housing, and agriculture. These were the four, okay? Big money went in. Where's money coming from? Among other things, it came from energy. It came from energy. They pulled in taxes, okay? Significant taxes. Now, they made a decision. When all this stuff was privatized under Yeltsin, under very nefarious, very questionable means, they made a decision not to nationalize. We know where that goes. You go in and nationalize stuff, and all hell breaks loose. You lose investment, money rushes out. They were having trouble with money leaving the country anyways. They didn't do that. What did they do instead? It was a cute term they came up with. They don't call it taxes. They call it natural rent. Natural rent. And the logic is this. These resources are the common wealth of our country as we understood it in Soviet times.
Like raising fees.
Well, but these are the common resources of our people as the Soviet system laid out. I'm not talking how it worked. I'm just saying this is what the propaganda, the ideology. This stuff was legally stolen. Technically it was legally done, but it was stolen. So we're simply going to heighten significantly taxes. We call it natural rent. You got it. We won't question how you got it, but you're going to pay rent on it. I mean, big rent. Raise tax. This money comes in. What did they do with it? Some of it went to the national priority projects. Let me finish the Medvedev story. As you can see, I get carried away and then I interrupt myself and then I lose track of what I'm talking about. You've totally lost me. Back to Putin. Medvedev for a second. So, some of the money went to national priority projects. He oversaw these. He was the government minister. So now, he went to Serbia when that stuff, Kosovo, that stuff was rearing up. He did a foreign venture. When the Ukrainians and Belarusians were raising hell over energy costs, he dealt with them. So I was having fun in my class. It's April. McCain's got that nomination. Obama and Clinton are going down the wire and said, hey, I'm going to throw in another one. This is my candidate. This guy's got a more impressive resume than these three people. He's younger than most of them. The guy is smart. That's my point. This notion, he's a good-looking guy that he's like wet behind the ears, kind of a lightweight. He's not a lightweight. He's not a lightweight. On the other hand, he's tied to somebody who I've claimed is a historically significant figure. I'm saying the most important leader of Russia since Stalin. So that's what he's up against. What's their relationship? Now here's how he was viewed in the West. I'm sorry, pardon me, maybe I'm being a little frisky. I always kind of like this one here. That's Putin's mug down there, if you get it. But now this is, he's a puppet. There's Putin with maybe a puppet, another puppet. Who's driving the car? It's Putin. This is the way we saw him. Now look, the Russians also understood. But the Russian view? Big brother, younger brother. Big brother, younger brother.